Colonel, you can fight in here. This is the war room.
Welcome to Cornhusker Corner with Blake.
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
And Brooks.
Is mayonnaise an instrument?
And you better bet your bottom dollar that these two brothers know how to handle business.
Here is a hand up to Thunder who gives it back to Mike Stokes. He's going to throw it. He's got a man out. Yeah! 40. It is. Eric Crouch. 15, 10, 5.
All right, welcome to Cornhusker Corner, where there's no place like this podcast. As always, we're your host Blake, my brother Brooks. Before we get started, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for coming here. So a couple things to go on today. Some big news that came out. Did not take very long at all. Troy Dannon hired as our new athletic director. I gave my instant thoughts last week. What's your instant thoughts here?
Well, I think that obviously when you're talking about potential candidates for these administrative positions, it's not something that the media covers like they do coaching candidates, for instance. So yeah, it's hard for us to keep our ear to the ground and really figure out, oh, we want this guy, we want that guy. I only said Mac Rhodes because it's somebody I knew, somebody that I had seen boosters while he was the AD, and they loved him. So you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. But anyway, but one thing I really like about it is if you look at the high level organizations in college football, Alabama and Georgia and all those types of teams, generally when there's turnover in these types of positions at schools like that, it's a quick change. They know who they're mm-hmm. looking for and they get them. You know what I mean? That's one thing that's encouraging to me is this whole week has been sort of a whirlwind with turnover and leadership at Nebraska. And It's been crazy for us to follow, but I think it is good how one moment we had Trev, the next moment we felt like, oh my gosh, our leadership this isn't good. Oh no, oh no, oh no. And then like one moment later, everything's announced. And shout out to the interim guys. Our president and AD has been announced this week, but one thing that interim AD Dennis LeBlanc and interim president Chris Kaborik got done while they were during their period of time was they extended Fred Hoiberg, which I thought was a really a good decision. We generally only talk football on this podcast, but it's been fun following other Nebraska sports this offseason. I mean, Matt Rule even said something in his press conference yesterday, which we could also touch on. He said something in his press conference yesterday, which was like, shout out to the winter sports because it's keeping us relevant. You know what I mean? And it's true because, you go to these places and people watch basketball, people watch baseball and all that stuff. And I think it's good. I think it shows strong leadership and decisiveness. I don't know much about the people. I know that Troy Dannon, he was a graduate of UNI. Where he was their athletic director from like 2008 to 2015. Mm-hmm. And then he moved, which was his alma mater. And then he moved on to Tulane, where they really built a hell of a group of five program at Tulane over the last 5-10 years and under Willie Fritz and all that stuff. And the funny thing I find about this was it was sort of like we get Trev poached from us. And from our perspective, it was like he's only been here for 2.5 years, which when you're an alumni, that's not a whole lot of time. Yeah. Well, then we take Troy Dannon from Washington.
5 months.
And he was there for 5 months. His family hadn't even moved to Washington yet. So,
Again, there might have been something for them. Yeah, there might have been something there that he was just kind of like, eh. And then in the heart of it, he's a Midwest kid. Like he's from Iowa. He even said in his press release that, he grew up watching, Husker football. And who knows if that's true? People say that all the time.
100%. And we've been through the ringer with loyalty. So it's like, just show me. Just show me.
I think one of the interesting things is, though, you touched on it, that like Tulane and built them up. And like, that wasn't an easy task. Like Tulane was like a doormat for a very long time. But between him and the decisions that he made there, and then, Willie Fritz just being a good coach, had got them up to like actual like relevance. So it's a good indicator of decisions to do that. And now he has resources behind him too that, like, I'm sorry, they don't have that at Tulane. They just don't.
No, and they don't have it at Washington either. Let's make that clear. Washington's a step up from Tulane. Nebraska's a step up from Washington. That's just how the rung works. I mean, Washington joins this Big Ten conference, and I respect Washington and their program and their fans and their stadium and all the tradition surrounding Washington football. I do. I respect it. But you've joined the Big Ten. There are about 5 or 6, maybe even 7 other brands that are above Washington in the pecking order of the Big Ten. That's just how it works. And as a Nebraska fan, I can admit there are probably 2, 3, maybe even 4 brands in the Big Ten that are probably at this point above Nebraska. I mean, there's just a pecking order to this stuff. And unfortunately, I feel like what happened with Troy Dannon at Washington is maybe he got there. Generally, when you join a new organization or start a new job, a couple of things are not what you expect. That's just how it works. It's a tale as old as time. It's a tale as old as construction projects taking longer than they initially, it's like just one of the rules of life is when you join a new job, some things are going to be different than you thought they were going to be. Yeah. So I'm thinking he got to Washington. A couple things were different than he thought they were going to be. Maybe there were some more challenges than he anticipated.
Got the head coach, taken.
Yeah. Immediately. Yeah, and you can't really blame him in that situation too. He's newly hired, and it's Alabama. You know what I mean? So, because I could see people spinning this as we just hired the guy that got hired at Washington. Their whole athletic department imploded basically, and then he leaves. Great. But I don't think that's the correct way to spin the situation. And if you look at his experience, it's impressive.
Yeah, and another thing that I thought was pretty interesting is his time with Tulane there. Rule was at Temple, so now that Rule even said in his little interview today during the pro day, that he wasn't like buddy like super close, but they had like a professional working relationship and things like that, as one does. So I thought it was interesting they hired somebody that like
the
Rule was familiar.
Oh yeah, agreed. It seemed like Rule. It seemed like Rule approved. I mean, it seemed like that was a genuine reaction to it. Yeah, and it seemed like he was happy. But I do think it's funny, like the demeanor of Rule during that little 5-minute interview spot he had today. He looked at the media like, I know this is big news and I need to talk to you, but I gave you guys 38 minutes yesterday. Like, come on. All right, I'll give you a couple answers.
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, it's funny because like there's no way he could have anticipated the biggest news happening.
I probably would have waited.
Yeah, we might have, but yeah, that Rule. I will say even though that there's been news that's come out since then, that Rule press conference is still worth touching on. For the first 12 minutes or so of the press conference, no questions, and he just sort of went off on the state of Husker football and what he thinks and his opinions on everything and where he is. And one of the biggest quotes in it that I really liked was he was just like, look, one of the things that's pissed me off these last couple of days is people in the national media reaching out to me and wondering what my contract situation looks like. And he goes, I'm here. My family's here. My kid's going to school here. My wife is starting a business here. I wouldn't lay down roots like that if I wasn't here and if I wasn't all in. So I'm here and I'm all in. And so, and that's the message that you needed to deliver. But Matt Rule is just a really good orator. And he makes you believe in what he's saying, even though those are the types of words that you're supposed to hear from a coach in this situation. Again, show me, don't tell me. Rule's really good at telling you. I need it. We'll see where we are 3 years from now. Yeah. I have a feeling deep down. And this is coming from the guy this is our 3rd year doing this podcast or so. I've predicted us to go like 10-2 and like 9-3 at the beginning of each of these years, and it's been tumultuous. I mean, we lost the coach throughout this time. We've been having losing seasons, and so I'm still predicting us to win the Big Ten sometimes. But I have a feeling deep down that these next couple of years might be fun. They might be fun. I just think like the universe, like there's some scales that need to balance out, you know what I mean? And we're due for a couple of years of some fun football. So at the end of the day, with all this leadership turnover, the only thing that really matters is what happens on the field. I mean, I want people to remember that. And yes, we've learned as Nebraska fans that the stuff that happens in these boardrooms is important, and especially when you're talking about 10, 20 years down the line, very important. But as far as right now, I do believe we have the right coach in there, And I do believe there's an opportunity to have some fun on the field, and that can
Yeah.
repair a lot of things. Look, it's a profitable Nebraska athletics is a profitable organization, even though the football teams had almost 10 years of no bowls.
Yeah, and that's the
You know,
thing. Like people are like, I don't think they realize how much of a backing there is behind Nebraska football right now. Even like when we're not good, like we haven't been good. We haven't been good for like probably like 10 years now, like really good. So you look at that and like, what if we start getting it together? What if we start clicking? Because people that aren't doing any right now, they're gonna start to. You know, and they're gonna do that. And part of that is like getting you know, the right talent in there.
No doubt.
And I think this is a good time to talk about the pro day.
Oh, real quick. I just wanted to make one point on that. We're talking about Nebraska and how well positioned they are financially in this. You know, if you look at MMA and boxing and combat sports in general, and like those types of things where you're selling a pay-per-view for a specific night, one thing that's understood about that business model is like 60, 70, 80%, like the majority of the revenue that comes in from that through the door and from pay-per-view revenue is from what you would call the casual fan. Essentially the bandwagoners, the people that got advertised to and said, okay, I'm going to watch this. Nebraska is nothing but hardcore fans right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We are nothing but hardcore fans right now. The bandwagoners, the casuals haven't even joined yet because there's nothing for them to watch yet. You know what I mean? And so it's like you could double, triple, quadruple the fan base just with a couple of good years, literally. So I just had that thought I wanted to get out, but let's move on to Pro Day.
Right. Yeah, Pro Day. Not a lot to touch on here. You know, it's just testing and route running for receivers and stuff like that. One of the things I did think was cool is that, you know, Raiola and Kalen got to throw to the receivers. So that was definitely intentional.
Did you hear Roll's little jab at him? He was asked why Raiola and Kalen were out here. He was like, well, they were available and we don't have anybody but freshmen. So
yeah. Well, and he's like, he said usually like there's like a GA or somebody throwing to them. And he's like,
or a quarterback that's participating in the senior day. You know?
And he's like, we wanted to give him a good look. So, I mean, that makes sense. A couple other things that he said, that I took note of is like with the scouts there, and he said they were blown away by the new facilities. The new weight room opened this week, I believe. Yeah. And like that they're actually in there and using it, and it looks good. So definitely an improvement. The facility isn't completely complete yet. And I think he said the offices and like the main where the public can go isn't open. But yeah, hopefully that's I don't know what the timeline is. I think it's supposed to be done by the season. Yeah. So
let me ask you this, because we're talking about facilities and stuff like that. The new stadium renovation project, what do you think is going to happen with that? Do you think that it's going to be tabled, or?
I don't know. I mean, now that there's a new AD in there, I mean, he's going to be able to kind of, because that was just a proposal, right?
Yeah. And it was fully spearheaded, and Trev was the heart behind that, really.
Yeah. Which, listen, there were very few critiques that I could see from that. I thought it was good at, you know, keeping the vibe of the old stadium with updating it a lot. And
it was more than just the stadium too. That was what's cool about it. He was creating a concourse around the stadium, and then they were investing in the immediate area around the stadium too. He was thinking about making something like a Wrigleyville, but in Lincoln. And you know, with where the setup they have right now with the rail yard and all that stuff, it's growing a lot, and it's already a really cool area. But could you imagine if they put all that money into the area and how much cooler it could be? So I mean, that's definitely of interest. But one of the things is they were having to eliminate half of, like, the anybody who had season tickets in that south end zone was going to lose them for 2 years, and there's people who have had tickets for 60, 70 years over there. So it was
contentious, especially for those people. But you have to realize, like, you have to go backwards before you go forwards 100%. To move on. And I mean, the stadium got renovated oh gosh, forever ago. Like I think
2004, 2005.
Yeah,
It was like when Bill Callahan got hired.
Yeah. So it's been a while. And listen, it shows in some places of the stadium, but it's not like we're gonna have to play at some high school stadium. I mean, they were going to do it like playing in it and like kind of like Texas, right?
Yeah.
When Texas did that big revamp of their stadium, for a couple of years there, it was just kind of unsightly to watch a game there or even on TV. Like you just saw all that. But now it looks like it's great. They did a great job with it. So you have to make a sacrifice.
I mean, when they use the vernacular of having a vision and like a vision for the future and stuff like that, that's what they're talking about. Stuff like that. And it means they're saying that some hard decisions will need to be made right now in order for it to be much better 20 years from now. Yeah. And that's true. But yeah, I don't know. I think it definitely needs to be done because there's been a change of how people renovate. Because it used to be like we had that 04-05 renovation. And then we had the 2013 renovation, which added the balcony on the East Stadium, the big, like tall. I mean, like, geez, it's the nosebleed of all nosebleeds. When you look up there, it's so high up. Yeah. But yeah, so they added that one, and the thought process back then was expand. We need to get more people in this stadium. Well, the thought process now has been okay. Well, 75,000 and 95,000. There's not a whole lot of difference between that. We'd rather have a comfortable and happy 75,000 than an uncomfortable and unhappy 95,000, right? Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting, but I think ultimately, like the current version of the plans might end up being tabled for now, and they just are going to rehash it.
I mean, listen, they're still in the fundraising. They're still in the fundraising. Kind of. I think they got the round one funding for it. But they're still in the other rounds to actually fund the project. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see like if he's going to make any changes to it. But I do think it's necessary, and
no doubt.
I think that he's probably would still probably go with it if I had to do like.
But you got to understand, and this probably speaks to a frustration that Trev had, and probably one of the big reasons why he left, which is they just built. It's not even done yet. We just talked about it. They just built that $250 million Go Big Red, Go Big project. Go big project. That always made me laugh. But they just built that. And like we said, they're not even fully moved into it yet. So that means less than a year ago or 2 years ago, they were knocking on these donors' doors or sending them emails or mail and asking them for money back then. And a lot of them, give $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, whatever these rich people are given. And then a year later, you're going to ask for 10 million more or whatever for a state. So you're asking this, they get donor fatigue. That's a real thing. No matter how much you love the organization, you get donor fatigue. So I think maybe
remember this was funded under Moose.
Yeah. The Go Big project, the Go Big project.
The Go Big project. So
yes.
It was kind of it was a while ago. I remember when they announced it, and Wandale Robinson was on stage after the Illinois game with Scott Frost and
no doubt. I just think a lot of donors had the thought, and this is something that I've heard people who have talked to donors say, where it's like, okay, well, we just did this. I agree that this needs to be done, but maybe this isn't quite the right time for it. And Trev is a here and now, let's get this done type of guy. So when he was running into roadblocks there, that he didn't like that because this is his project.
See, here's the thing: what they did with Go Big Project and all that stuff, that was for the players. That was for recruiting. That was to help the team grow and succeed. Mm-hmm. The stadium, that's for the fans.
Yeah,
like that is for the experience and of the fans, and that is something that is important. So especially when the success that we think is going to come starts to roll in, it's going to be a lot more glaring, and you want to be ahead of that. You want to be ahead of that as opposed to behind it. So that's where I stand on that.
Yeah. I mean, and then you just look at like the Indomitian Sioux weight room, which is a hell of a weight room. And that was built in 2010, 2011, like shortly after Sioux left, he donated that money and they built that new weight room. And so you think 2011 through 2023, that's when they used that weight room. How many wins came out of that weight room? Not a whole lot compared to the rest of Nebraska's history. And so you look at fans, and fans are seeing the players get all this stuff, and you want the players. Don't get me wrong. Like, the players need good facilities. Nebraska needs to be competitive there. But the fans are the ones bringing in the revenue, and they're so loyal. So doing something to reward them, i.e. a stadium project that makes the stadium better, is something that's, in my opinion, needed for sure. But we can move on topics, no doubt.
Yeah, but no, success fixes a lot.
No doubt.
And it'll fund that thing real quick.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
But I mean, there's nothing much more from the pro day. Apart from those things, Raiola, throwing just when there was a video of him just warming up, just casually throwing it 45 yards, and he didn't even look like he was trying. I was just like, oh my gosh, he was just like a flick of the wrist, and not like lobbed. It was just like doop. And then they had a guy, like a cutoff guy for the person throwing it back. It was funny.
It's funny because Kalen and Raiola, you sit there and watch them throw, and I'm no expert, but it feels like they're almost like yin and yang archetypes. You know what I mean? Where it's like Raiola has all the talent in the world, and I'm sure he works hard, no doubt about it. But when you have all the talent in the world, sometimes things get overlooked because you just know, like, your talent's going to be there. Whereas Kalen, maybe he doesn't have all the talent in the world, but he seems like the type of guy who's like an Eli Manning. You know what I mean? Or he's like a Tom Brady at more of an extent. Like, he's not so impressive looking, but ultimately he seems like the type of guy that could get the job done too. So it's going to be interesting watching these two freshmen battle it out. No doubt about it. Spring football is going to be fun to follow. It really is.
Something else that is going to be fun to watch play out is the NCAA tournaments.
Unbelievable.
So it's wild. I mean, Nebraska getting the luck of the draw to play A&M in both the men's and the women's. Come on.
Yeah.
That wasn't an accident.
So so here's the thing. So the week leading up to it, the seeding, the way it was working out for the men's side of things, I didn't follow the seeding of the women's side of things, but the seeding of the men's side of things, it was like, oh my God, we're going to play one of three teams, and one of the three teams is A&M. Yeah. Just by the way it worked out. So then when you're in the NCAA and you have that much plausible deniability to be like, well, they were likely going to play them anyway, so yeah, they're definitely playing them. Easy. And then an hour later, when the women's committee is deciding, they're just like, it would be hilarious. That's where the shenanigans came in. Because when I saw the men's, I was like, that's crazy. But ultimately, I was following bracketology, and it made sense. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the timing was impeccable, and it's an unbelievable coincidence. And then when the women's happened, it was like, this is not a coincidence. No way. They did all this on purpose. And you know what? It's fun. I will say it's fun from my perspective because there's a whole other angle of motivation for me to think about while I'm watching the game, and that's fun. But from an athletic department standpoint, from a Nebraska standpoint, if you're either coach of these teams, it takes the focus away from what it should be on.
And Rule actually touched on that, when he was talking about an AD that'll fight, and that's what he said that, Troy would be, fight for Nebraska and everything. But he said that, like, I don't like that happened. And he's like, of course, like, some people would like it, but like, I don't like, because that takes away from the season that those players have had. And it'll just be about the athletic director that just left. Which I completely agree, because that's what it's turned into, as opposed to Nebraska and getting to the tournament for the first time in a really long time, and potentially being able to get a win. Which that's their goal. A win.
No, so it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate ultimately, but as a fan, you have to be honest with yourself and say, but that angle of it makes it a little more fun for us. You have to admit.
Except if they lose.
No doubt about it. No, but that's why it makes it more fun, because the consequences are dire. You know what I mean? Like, you can't have fun without having the opposite end of that spectrum. It'd be great for them to win their first tournament game no matter what, but it would be stratospheric for them to win their first tournament and beat their old athletic director, whose name's on the stadium, who betrayed his athletic department. It would be amazing. Plus, you got the Keisei Tominaga story. Everybody loves Keisei, and you got that angle. And Pat McAfee's talking about him on the show this week and all that stuff. Yeah. So I've followed Nebraska basketball this year. I would say I've watched about 50% of the games. That's being generous. So I'd say between 30 to 50%. And so I'm not an expert on this team. I don't want to say anything out of term to where people can be like, that guy said this and that was the curse. But it's just sort of setting up. Like if this was football, I would say, oh, this is setting up for hard crash and fall. That's what I would say. But it's not football, and I don't want to curse them, so knock on wood, I'm not saying that. But if it were football, that's what I would say. With all this media attention and with all the hype, I'd be like, ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
we'll see.
But one of the interesting things is
another interesting thing about the brackets, your alma maters, if Nebraska does win, I mean, more than likely, unless Houston lays a complete egg against.
Yeah, if they can't measure up to Longwood, then we'll know. I mean, everybody will know. They just got to lay it out on the table and see who measures up to who.
Yeah. No. Just take out the ruler and go for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. As long as Houston takes care of the business there, unless they run into a stroke of bad luck, they could,
Okay, Husker fans. Let me put it this way. I was born in Omaha. I've been a Husker fan my whole life. We've moved to Houston. I've been here for 10 years, and I went to Houston and graduated from there. So it's my alma mater. I had the opportunity to go this weekend. I chose not to because it was just going to be too busy of a weekend. And one of my friends who was going to go with me didn't want to go. I didn't want to get on a plane. It was only going to be an 8-hour drive, but I didn't want to do it by myself. Long story short, I'm not going this weekend, but I had the opportunity to. And I'll tell you this much. Mom and Dad would not have been happy if I went, because if I went, I'd be wearing exclusively Husker stuff. Even if they lose the first day, I'm going to the game the next day with Husker stuff on. So that's where I am with it. Houston's a basketball school, so I do root for them, and I'm going to root for them throughout the tournament as long as it's not involving Nebraska. I want them to play. I think it'd be awesome. And so, yeah, my room's been decorated like this the whole time. It's not something for just this week.
There's a Houston in the shot, so just so you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it should be a fun weekend. I'm definitely looking forward to it. I'm getting pretty hyped up for the games, man.
Yeah, I think between the men and the women, they're split. Either the men win and the women lose, or the women win and the men lose. I think we go 1-1.
I'll say this: we're making predictions. Okay, so then predict it specifically. Who wins? Who loses?
I'm not gonna say that. I haven't watched Nebraska enough this year. I think I've only watched like 3 or 4 games.
So what, the men, you've only watched 3 or 4 games?
Yeah.
Okay, but what about the women? You watched any of the women?
I watched the women squander the Big Ten championship when I was at a bar.
Yeah, they beat Iowa a couple weeks before that. And yeah, I watched like the last half of that game. So I'm basically an expert on the women and Jazz Shelley and all them. They're 6 seed playing an 11 seed. That one seemed like they had to do more shifting around for the teams to play each other, from what I hear. So we'll see. But here's what I predict. I predict that both the men's and the women will win. I predict that the men will win by 15 points or more. Wow. And I project that the women will win in a very close game.
Okay. Well, I'll project that the women win in a close game. And that the men lose by 8.
Well, but what? 40 to 32? Is that how they're? You know what I mean? That could be it. I mean, maybe, but like Texas A&M's the worst 3-point shooting team, one of the worst ones in the country this year. I mean,
they almost beat Houston this year, though.
Yeah, like I was there. They didn't almost beat them. It wasn't even close. People say they almost beat Houston when they don't realize Houston's killing you, even though they're only winning by 6. Because of the style.
They were down by 21. They were down by 21 and they came back. It just depends if they can get hot or not. Like it's what Texas A&M team showed up. That's what they're inconsistent.
Yeah,
But I think
Houston's just a
they'll-
weird team because like the margins aren't as big of a deal with them. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it's just not as big. So yeah, I mean, if Houston's beating a team by 6, they could be killing them. It just doesn't show on the scoreboard right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we'll see. It's going to be interesting, man. I'm definitely excited. I'm glad Nebraska basketball has given us some Husker stuff to talk about and to be entertained by in this offseason, because after March Madness ends, we're pretty much looking forward to spring ball, and I'm going to be at the spring game this year, so I'm excited for that again. So yeah. Yep. Anything
Awesome.
else we want to touch on today?
I don't think so.
right.
I think that's it. Again, thanks for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel. You can follow us on X at @CHusker_corner and Instagram, Cornhusker Corner. And always remember that there's no place like
This podcast.